Hello, everybody. My name is Henry Garecki, and I'll be your speaker today for A Balanced Retirement Life. Before we get started, I just want to alert you to a chat box you see in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Please don't be shy. Even while I'm speaking, just type away your questions, and I may take a look at them while I'm speaking, or I'll just wait till after the hour. There'll be plenty of time after the hour for actually about 45 minutes or so I'll be speaking for me to get to your questions. Again, my name is Henry Garecki. A little bit about me. I'm a CFP, that's Certified Financial Planner. I've been in the financial services business for over 30 years, doing everything from investment banking work in New York to working in the wealth management departments of big banks like Citibank and UBS. And now I have my own firm called HG Wealth Management here in Chicago for about the last 10 years, doing financial planning and investment management for clients. So I think I can answer most of your questions, but if I can't, I'll just get back to you. So let's get started. Today is a sort of a primer on how to prepare for retirement. And what I want to alert, obviously I can't see you all, but basically we want to prepare you for what we call the red zone, where if anyone on this call is within 5 years of retiring, 5 years, you really want to buckle down and do a lot of the work in terms of preparing for retirement. A lot of this presentation has to do with things other than money, because I know with the commercials and ads in newspapers and all that stuff, you probably know there's a huge emphasis on money, which I know is important, things like Social Security and pensions and 401ks and all that stuff. And we'll talk briefly about that. But today we want to emphasize a lot about the other aspects of retirement, the emotional, the mental, the physical aspects of getting older and preparing for retirement. So again, the red zones. If anyone here has been, it's about 5 years or so before they plan to retire, is when you should start really cracking down and doing some of the things that we're going to suggest today. There's a very famous author in my business regarding retirement. His name is Mitch Anthony. And I just want to start out by mentioning Mitch Anthony's 7 retire myths. And it's a great entree to today's talk. Number 1, 65 is old. Of course, that's a myth, right? A lot of people are living a lot longer, especially women in the group. Women are living to almost 100. I read recently that the person who's going to live to 130 has already been born. So plan on a long retirement. If you leave the office at around 65, 70, if you live to 100, that's a 30-year retirement. Some people actually are retired more than they actually been working. So it's a myth that 65 is old. Number 2, being retired means you're not working. That's not true either, whether because you like to work, so you have some kind of a part-time job. A lot of people have a different passion. They feel, well, I did my 9-to-5 career thing to get the kids through college and all that, but now I still want to work, but I really want to do X. Maybe it's writing a book, or maybe you make some kind of arts and crafts and you sell them on weekends at art fairs. Maybe you want to open up a business, sailing, offering charters, whatever it is. Just because you're retired does not mean you work. Obviously, you don't want to work 80 hours a week. Maybe you do if you really are passionate about this new career, but it doesn't mean that you're basically laid up by the pool or playing golf all day. Number 3, you have to be 62 to do what you really want to do. Well, as I just said, a lot of people say, yes, I had to do what I had to do to get the kids through college, but now I always really wanted to write this book. Or I always like to, teach English to immigrants or whatever. Now is your chance. So you don't have to wait till 62. I'm going to encourage you today to start integrating some of these ideas into your life now while you still have a job, so that when you do quit, you'll have everything set up and ready to go. So, for example, if you're a person that makes objects out of wood, maybe you sculpt wood objects or whatever, and you're still working, of course, because you're on this call, well, I'm encouraging you to start working on that hobby of making woodcraft and looking into selling it at these weekends, especially summertime, these weekend sort of art shows, flea markets, whatever you want to call them, so that you have some idea, is it working? Do people like your stuff? And then when you retire full-blown, you'll have that business all set up. You have your business cards. You know what you're doing. You maybe even have an inventory of things to sell, and you got it. You're ready going. Don't wait till you leave the office to start. Start now. Number 5, A life of ease is the ultimate retirement goal. Well, obviously, as you can tell already, but from what I'm saying, that's not the case. I don't think many people will be very happy sitting around the pool or golfing all day long. It's fun maybe for a month or two, but trust me, it's really not that much fun for long-term folks, unless you have some kind of health issues maybe. Most people want to be somehow engaged doing something. Number 6, you're going to spend most of your retirement income on doctors and pills. Again, that's not true. Americans are living longer and longer. If you take care of yourself, and I'll mention more on that later, things like getting some exercise, the prescribed amount is around 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week. Now, you don't have to do that all at one time. You can bunch it up and say, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 10 minutes there, just so it adds up to about 30 minutes. Eating right, proper nutrition, portion control, all that is so important. If you do that, hopefully you can stave off the doctors and pills to way into your late 70s or even later. Last but not least, number 7, I can do this myself. So obviously, I don't want to sound self-interested because I am a financial planner, but really it takes a lot of calculations and wherewithal, and I highly encourage you to get some professional help, at least for an hour or 2 or 3 hours, just to make sure that, to review your situation, make some recommendations, and make sure you're on the right track. I'm here speaking on behalf of Anthem. Call Anthem. They have CFPs on call, ready to take your questions and help you out. Even if they cannot answer, they can maybe refer you to a certified financial planner in your neighborhood. But try not to do it totally on your own. It's pretty complicated, and there's definitely some things that you need to know that you may not have availed of yourself if you're totally doing this on your own. So today's objectives, we're going to talk about how you define retirement. It's not what you think, as you probably can already guess. And I'm going to go through a slew of different issues, from emotional to money, health and fitness, hobbies and interests, redefining family relationships, and focusing on the positive. And at the end, before Q&A, I always do a top 10, just like David Letterman. And today's top 10 is tips for preparing for retirement. All right? So let's dive in here. So first point, what is retirement? This may sound like a dumb question, but you might think, what is retirement? And what I want you to think about is the cliff dive versus the slide. What am I saying? If any of you are old enough to remember, there was a show on Saturdays called The Wide World of Sports, and I'm old enough to remember that when I was a kid. And it basically, I think it was 4 p.m. or 3 p.m., something like that, on a Saturday afternoon, all year long, and it featured, sports from all over the world. It could be figure skating championships. It could be downhill skiing from Austria, all that stuff. Not the big stuff like World Series or Super Bowl, but more unusual kind of sports from around the world. Well, there was often a popular session on cliff diving from Acapulco, Mexico. And if you've ever seen this, the divers, it's a contest, of course, but it's also a contest of nerves, I should say, because the divers have to time exactly when they push off the cliff, because the tide below, the water has to rise at the point when they're going to hit the water, so obviously they don't get injured. So that's what I call cliff dive retirement. And it's sort of the old-fashioned way. It's sort of like our dad's retirement, our granddad's retirement. What do I mean? The whole thing about you announce your retirement, and on a Friday afternoon, you have a little party with a cake and maybe some soda, whatever, and you get a gold watch, which, of course, is never going to happen. And you pack up your stuff, and you're out of there, and you wake up Monday morning with nothing to do. That's a cliff dive retirement, someone who had made no plans, no preparations, just couldn't wait to that day when he walked out at 5 p.m. with that box of belongings, and he's out of there, he's done. What I want to encourage you to do is like a slide kind of retirement, glide through. And the analogy I always often use is a plane coming in for landing. You probably, I live here in Chicago, so Chicago O'Hare International is one of the busiest airports in the world. And especially if you come in from an international flight, the pilot instructs the cabin crew to get the cabin ready for landing way, way before the actual landing, sometimes an hour before. And you know the story. You put away your tray tables, put the seat back upright, stow all the things back underneath the seat in front of you or above, and everything's neat and tidy, seatbelt, everything's ready for landing. So that's what the kind of retirement I want you to think about. So like I said, the red zone, 5 years before you retire, you have that vision, you start doing the planning in terms of your health, your hobbies, what kind of crafts you want to do, of course, crunch the numbers for the money and all that. So instead of like cold turkey with the cliff dive, you want to do a gradual thing. So on this slide here, you can see, are you going to work part-time? Is that something you want to do? Do you want to maybe do it only in seasonal times? Like maybe you want to be something close to the water during the summertime, or you're a ski buff during the wintertime, or whatever. What kind of interest do you have in hobbies? Of course, when will you still need insurance? Can you, afford to buy it on the exchanges before you get to Medicare at 65? Do you still need a steady income? Are you going to have a mortgage? These are all issues that you have to kind of think about in terms of what actually is it. So, for example, you may actually, quote unquote, retire from your 9-to-5 career kind of job, but you still have a mortgage, or you actually have a new mortgage now because you moved to a different part of the country, and your plan is that, yes, I'm quote-unquote retired, but I still have a mortgage to pay off, so I'm going to work at something I love more than I used to do, but I'm not working 40, 50 hours a week. I can pay all the bills, including my mortgage, in this new job for only 30 hours a week or so. And maybe they'll even throw in health insurance if you're doing this before 65. So that's just an example that I want you to think about, something like that. A big part of defining retirement is who are you going to be doing this with. Again, I want you to think about cliff dive versus slide. Another way to put it, I should say, is retirement an event or a process? An event or a process? So there's so many questions that you have to think about. Relationships, and I'll talk more about this later. But you have to you must involve your spouse at a big in all these decisions, especially when it comes to money, especially when it comes to Social Security, because your spouse, especially if you're thinking about the woman, probably will outlive the man, and there's so many benefits to her Social Security benefits and stuff. If the man, assuming he's the bigger earner, or whoever the bigger earner is, delays taking Social Security because the eventual survivor benefits will be greater than for the surviving spouse. That's just one example. Also, relationships are important in terms of your family. For example, if you never got along with your sister or your brother, I highly encourage you to start thinking about making amends, because when you're retired and you have more time and closer to, the end of life, those kind of relationships are going to be more important, and maybe petty things that got you off track when you were younger are not that big of a deal anymore. Also, there's a huge, huge identity shift when you retire, or at least when you leave your main career kind of job. So, for example, you may have this whole identity about you're vice president of this department, and you worked your way up after promotion after promotion after promotion for 40 years. And you have X number of people reporting to you, and you report up the chain, and maybe you're 2-3 levels only away from the C-suite and all this kind of stuff. Well, guess what? All that goes away when you're retired. You're now no VP of nothing. All the friends, people you retired, report to you don't report to you anymore. You don't have a boss anymore. The people you may eat lunch with, go to Starbucks with, that's all gone. That whole construct is gone now. So you have to think about, well, how am I going to reconstruct that? Am I okay with that? How am I going to deal with that when I finally retire? On the right side of this page, there's all kinds of general, basic stuff you need to know, like when need, money, where are you going to be physically, are you going to buy, lease, sell, rent? Is there any kind of physical things to think about, like are you disabled, or you need wheelchair access, all that kind of stuff. So again, these are the things, like I mentioned, 5 years before you move on to think about. So you can't do this the day after you retire. This is something you should start thinking about now. So emotional issues, it's not just about the numbers, and I'll get to that shortly, but there's so many emotional issues to retirement too, or at least, when I say retirement by leaving your main job, your career kind of job, the who, what, and where. Like I mentioned, you're going to lose your identity that you've had. You always were Dr. Smith, or you were chief of cardiology, or you were vice president of product management at this firm, or you're an attorney, all that stuff, the people you work with, the people you ate with, people you went to happy hour after work with, all that is gone once you're retired. So you have a lot of emotional issues to think about well before your retirement then. I recommend that you may want to talk with some of your retired friends or coworkers. Maybe there's people on this call who are not quite that old, and friends who are maybe 5-10 years older than you. Just, go to coffee with them or a beer after work or whatever, and just kind of, pick their brain and say, well, How did it go? What if you could have, what I should have, could have, what could I have done differently? What if you could do what you have done differently regarding these kinds of issues, so that you can learn from them. Perhaps there's a church group. If you go to church, maybe there's some, like I said, coworkers. Sometimes there's community centers that actually have these sort of retirement groups. And again, I'm a big fan of learning from my elders. Why not? Why reinvent the wheel? Because if they work with you, especially if they're your friends or somehow acquainted to you, you somehow have similarities, right? You're probably in the same socioeconomic group. Maybe you're the same religion. Maybe you live in the same neighborhood. There's all these things that are very similar to you. So if they say, I would have done X, Y, or Z, you may want to think about doing X, Y, or Z, right? So it makes sense to do that. So be on the lookout for, discussion groups at your church, maybe at the company, people who maybe are 2-3 years out already into retirement, and see how they dealt with the loss of identity, what they would have done differently, and whatnot. Learn from people who've walked ahead of you. All right, the money question, of course, I said we're not going to dwell on it, but obviously it's an important issue. Can you afford it? One of the most important things you can do, not even if you're retired, but even if you're not going to retire, that I hope if you take away from here anything, is the importance of having a budget, the B word. It's so important. My analogy I always use is the budget is like the GPS or map when you're driving long distance. If you say you're going from New York City to Grand Canyon for your summer vacation, you can kind of wing it, point the car southwest, but there's a very good chance that you're going to get lost, which means it's going to cost you more money, more time, crabby spouse, crabby kids, all that. It would have been so much better if you planned things out ahead of time and saying, well, in the first day we'll get to this city, we can, stay overnight with Aunt Mary. She left to see the kids. The second day you go to this far, and you know what I mean, you go down the line. Another analogy I often use is it's like the blood work at the doctor's office. You know that you don't just walk in and express some kind of ailment or get your annual physical, and the doctor just takes a look at you and say, oh, you need Lipitor, you have high cholesterol, or we need an x-ray of that ankle, it could be broken. No, there's all kinds of questions they ask, blood pressure tests, the all-important blood work, and, of course, maybe even an x-ray. And then a doctor can read your chart and say, oh, well, your cholesterol's kind of high. We may need to put you on some kind of statin. Or your vitamin D levels are too low. You may want to start taking vitamin D 1,000 or 800 IU every day, whatever. Same thing with your money. You can't just wing it. You can't just assume you can pay your bills. You got to know exactly where the money is going. So I encourage everybody on this call to start working on their budget ASAP. You can use paper and pen, the old-fashioned way, which I actually prefer because it actually shows you. It's almost sort of painful to say you spent so much eating out this week than actually having a computer tell you. Excel spreadsheets also great, but there's apps too. Mint.com, like chocolate mint, M-I-N-T. Mint.com is free. You can download that to your phone, hook up your bank accounts, credit cards, and it'll scrape that every month and say you spent X amount on groceries, so much on, gasoline on down the line. YouNeedABudget.com, YNAB, or spell it out, YouNeedABudget.com is free up to a point, and then they start charging you. That's also a very, very good budgeting site. But whatever you do, start today, because you're going to have to know if you can afford retirement. How will you know? Well, generally speaking, we in our business, in the financial services business, think that you will need about 80 to 85% of what you need today in retirement. So, but you need to know what your start point is first. So, if you have a $5,000 a month lifestyle, 80% of that is $4,000. So then you can go to the calculators, whether you call Anthem or go online to different sites like AARP or Charles Schwab or Fidelity or TD Ameritrade. There's countless of them, and say, well, I need a $4,000 lifestyle a month, and you have so much saved already. You get X amount from Social Security. Bing, press the button. They'll tell you what you need to have saved the midnight before you leave your job, right? But if you don't know the number's $4,000 a month, that's nowhere that calculator cannot help you. That's where I'm telling you it's like driving cross country without a GPS. If you cannot tell the software that you need $4,000 a month, they cannot tell you about anything about what you need, okay? So start today. Start crunching your numbers, and this is a great exercise for everybody of every age, obviously, to know where your money's going so you can plan out how you may pay off credit cards, maybe, add more to your 401k, and all that. One tip I will mention if possible, when you do this, when you have a budget and know, let's say, for example, you do need $4,000 a month, and this is after you adjust it because either you need more money than now because you're traveling around the world, or you have all kinds of grandkids and you want to visit them a couple times a year and they live coast to coast, or maybe you need a lot less than 80% because you really are frugal and you have no mortgage, and maybe even going to move to a really cheap part of the country, sell a big house in New York City kind of thing and move to something less expensive in Arkansas, so your budget will go way down. Some people who think about moving abroad because it's so much cheaper in foreign countries, whatever it is, try to figure out, if possible, that any money coming in the door during what time it will pay for your fixed expenses. So if you have a pension and or Social Security, whatever that comes to, if you can actually have that pay for the necessities, things you have to have, like maybe your mortgage or rent payment, some money for utilities, condo assessments, food, whatever that nut is, you can sleep better at night knowing that no matter what happens to your portfolio because of the stock market, the money coming in the door will at least pay for the necessities, or a good percentage of them. So then, if the market's bad and you run out of money, you just don't buy that new car, or you're not going to go on vacation this year. But at least you got food and you got the rent paid. So that's one little tip. Try to make sure that money coming in the door will pay for your absolute necessities like food, water, utilities, things like that. And other things on this page you can see. Besides determining how much you need to retire, do you going to have a mortgage or not? I highly recommend trying to pay off the mortgage before you retire. You can have much more flexibility in retirement if you have no mortgage. Are there any kind of medical things to think about? Like, are you by any chance less healthy than the average American? So that could be even more expensive when you retire. FYI, Medicare does not pay for everything. People are always shocked when I say that. Yeah, especially does not pay for dental, vision, long-term care costs, hearing aids. Those are all very expensive items. I know lots of people over age 65 who pay thousands of dollars a year just for dental because things like crowns and new teeth and dentures are really expensive. And obviously, that happens more often when you're older, right? Not when you're 25 years old. Things like that, your teeth get worse and worse, and those kind of expenses, those kind of problems pop up when you're older. So remember, Medicare does not pay for everything, and hearing aids are thousands of dollars, dentures, crowns, root canals, those are thousands of dollars. You have to plan for all those things. Okay, so again, work on your budget. Try to figure out, if you can adjust that number for what you think it'll cost you in retirement, but the only place to start is what do you need to live on today? Everybody's different. Some people have a $5,000 a month lifestyle. Some people have a $8,000 a month lifestyle, what have you. Don't forget, you're not going to be putting money into a 401k, and you will save money possibly on clothes and commuting costs and stuff like that. So that's why we say 80% is roughly what you'll need. Okay, so again, Social Security and Medicare, like I said, Medicare does not pay for everything. A couple things to look out for. One, Social Security. If you haven't done so yet, log into www.ssa.gov, that's the Social Security Administration site, and create your own account. Every year, you should check, because remember they used to send those paper statements that they don't do anymore? You don't need that. You log into this site and create your own account, your own user and password and all that, and first of all, make sure that your W-2's earnings are correct. They very rarely make a mistake, but sometimes it happens. So if you made X last year, make sure that they show X, that you put that X for 2018, because obviously your benefits are based off of X, right? Secondly, later on, especially after age 62, when you qualify for Social Security, you want to make sure that no one has hacked you, with identity theft, and sort of somehow filed as you to collect benefits. So again, SSA.gov, it's a great place to start in terms of trying to get a grip on what is it that you can expect from Social Security. So we don't have a lot of time to talk about Social Security, but just FYI, you can start getting benefits at 62. It's planned you should wait till probably at least full retirement age, which would be around 66 years in a few months, or 67 for everybody else. And you max out at 70. Between your full retirement age and 70, you get an 8% increase in your benefit. So I always say, unless there's some reason why you are ill or you don't think you're going to live long or whatever, highly recommend checking in to see if you can to work at least till 70. Because, again, if you have a long retirement, especially, remember I said consider your spouse. If you're the higher earner, try to work it out that you don't collect till 70, because eventually if you pass away, assuming you do, the survivor will actually get a much bigger, obviously, survivor benefit, right, if you have a bigger benefit. And the biggest benefit you get is at 70. Once you reach 70, there's no reason to wait anymore. You start taking Social Security. Even if you're still working, it doesn't matter. Might as well take it, right? It's not going to get any bigger. Okay, I already talked about Medicare. It does not pay for everything. You do not want to miss the Medicare start date. There's a 7-month window around your age 65, okay? So 3 months before the month you turn 65, plus the 1 month you are turning 65, plus the 3 months after you turn 65. So 3 plus 1 plus 3 equals 7. That 7-month window, you do not want to miss enrollment, because if you do, it's very expensive. Basically, it goes up, premium goes up 10% a year every year you don't enroll. So there's Part A and Part B. We don't have a lot of time to talk about it again, but again, I just want to emphasize you don't miss that window. And if any of you, for some reason, the only way you can get out of it is if you're still working for a company with full health insurance, then you can delay signing up for Medicare A and B. Again, you must be working full-time for a company and and be part of their health insurance plan, not COBRA. COBRA does not count. Any kind of, retiree health plan kind of thing does not count. You must be working and have full, just like a regular employee, working full-time, whatever is necessary, how many hours, 30 hours, whatever, full-time, whatever they call it, to qualify for the regular health insurance plan that all employees have, not COBRA. Then if you have that, you can delay signing up for Medicare. But be careful, once you do quit, make sure you don't miss that window to immediately sign up for Medicare. Okay, that's a very fast primer on Social Security and Medicare. I talked for over an hour on that, but I just want you to think of those couple of things right there. Health money mistakes. A couple of money mistakes you can think about is obviously waiting too long. Remember that 5-year window, the red zone, so don't wait too long before you retire. Start today, what you actually will need. People always forget about diversifying their money. I'll talk a little bit about that later. But one fallacy I see a lot of times in my business is that people think just because you retire, you cash everything out, you get rid of all your stocks and go all cash. That's a very big mistake. You still need a very healthy amount of stocks to grow, right? Inflation is your biggest problem when you retire. To keep up with the purchasing power, you need growth. The only way you get growth is through stocks. So you need a good, healthy chunk of stocks, even though they go up and down and can cause a lot of angst, but it's necessary long-term. Again, if you have a 20, 25, 30-year retirement, that's way, way too long to be too safe in CDs and cash. Keep your money well diversified, and maybe even consider working longer to beef up that account. I always see folks. My joke always is, don't tell your boss to take this job and shove it until you are ready. What does that mean? I see so many people who are tired of working. They hate their boss. They hate their job. Haven't done any of the planning we're talking about today. They just quit. They think they have enough money. They quit. Well, guess what? 2-3 years in, they don't have enough money. They blew too much or both. And now they're working at Walmart as a greeter. Well, I make fun of that. There's nothing wrong with being a greeter at Walmart, which actually, by the way, I heard that they're actually phasing that job out for most locations. But I say to them, look, wouldn't it have been better to do some planning and keep your good job? Most people get paid the most right before they retire, obviously right there at the tops of their careers, peaking out in earnings and all that. Wouldn't it have been better to just wait another year or two, making that good money with all the benefits, then retire without just running out the door and not being prepared? That's what I'm thinking. So maybe working longer is your story. What I found actually, ironically, sort of like, sometimes the healthiest people are the ones who go to the doctor. That's probably why they're healthy. When I speak live on this, I find that most of the people in the audience who really have done their homework and saved diligently for retirement are the ones that actually most of the time want to work a little longer. There's something about once someone tells you, it's almost like a dog. in a cage or whatever. Once the cage is open and you can go, everyone's all of a sudden like, well, there's no rush to go. This job is not that bad, and I have all these friends over here, and I got nothing to do at home. Or you have a spouse that you don't want to do anything with home. So it's funny. It's just you want the option to maybe retire, but you don't have to retire, and that's a nice place to be. When you have money, when you do this planning, you have options. You don't have to leave. If you want to, you can, but it's nice to have options. So that's where you don't want to make mistakes. You want to have the money there, do the planning, make your budget, make sure you have enough. And once they say, well, it looks like from all, calculations you can retire at age 67 on this amount, you might say, okay, great, but I really don't hate my job, and my boss is talking about another promotion, and, I'm very healthy. My parents live to 85, and I'm only 65, whatever it is. And you might want to work a little bit longer, not because you have to, but you want to, and that's a great, great place to be. Okay. Moving on to health and fitness, very, very important. I always tell everybody that it's very difficult to be happy if you're sick. It's also very expensive. Being sick is never fun, and it's definitely not fun when you're retired and older and you don't have all that money coming in the door. So I highly encourage you to invest in yourself by investing in your own health and fitness. I recently read an article that states that people who work out regularly, eat right, proper nutrition, proper portion control, and all that save $2,500 a year. So if you think about it, if you have a health club that maybe costs $100 a month, that's $1,200 a year, right? That it costs you, but you're still $1,300 ahead. Like I said, it's very, very expensive to be sick. And of course, when you get older, you're going to get old anyway, and that's going to be expensive at the end of the life. But why keep that date up forward if you don't have to? So look into right away is some kind of exercise regimen. The prescribed basic good rule of thumb is 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week. That 30 minutes does not have to be all consecutive. You can do 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, another 5 minutes there, just what adds up to around 30. And you can do little things like park the car further away from the entrance to your office or mall or whatever and walk. If it's only 1 or 2 flights from where you want to go in the building, take the stairs instead of the elevator if that's possible. Go for a walk in the afternoon instead of grabbing a Snickers bar. So all these little things sort of add up. Just so think about 30 minutes. Some people like those wristband apps like, 10,000 steps a day, whatever. That seems to be helpful for a lot of people. That's a great goal. But just start moving. Start getting busy. Consult Anthem for possible help with your nutrition and diet. That's also very, very important. I always say, pay now or pay later. Sometimes people say, why shop at Whole Foods and pay extra for organic this and that? Well, there's some good things to buy organic, especially fruits and vegetables that you basically eat whole. You don't peel the skin. There's some fruits and vegetables that have tons of pesticide in them that it's very difficult to totally wash off. Are you going to die if you eat all that stuff? Well, eventually. So why not pay a little bit more so you save trouble later on in life. But invest in yourself. It's really very hard to be happy if you're sick. So look into new kinds of activities. Maybe there's a gym in your office, factory. Maybe there's a inexpensive, you can call Anthem and see if there's some kind of discount that they have with a local chain in your neighborhood. Maybe you want to consider Weight Watchers for some kind of diet plan if you need to lose weight. If anyone is still smoking, please call Anthem for ideas on how to cease smoking, which is one of the worst things possible. Sleep well. All the above. You know what I'm saying. This is not news. But again, it becomes much more important when you get older because, of course, not only you're older, like an old car, more stuff starts happening, but also you're older, so you're not as quick to recover from pain from other issues. You lose muscle mass, and you want to keep all that toned up and ready to go as you age. Okay? Invest in yourself. Hobbies and interests. Remember that first point I talked about at the very beginning about how you don't have to wait till age 62 to do what you really want to do? Think about it. I'm not saying you have to. Maybe you are happy playing golf all day long or sitting by the pool with a Mai Tai, all that. But most people probably are not going to be happy doing that. So think now about what do you want to do. Again, think about your spouse. Maybe you can do it together, like this picture on this slide, or maybe you do not just want to do it together because you'll kill each other. But anyway, think about what you may start integrating to your life now, some kind of hobby, interest, volunteering work, and integrate it into your life now before you leave your work. So, for example, let's pretend you love to sail, but you can't afford to buy a boat. Well, before you retire, maybe you can start networking around the harbor, like here in Chicago. There's always what they call, I think they call them hands. There's always some demand for hands, usually younger people, but not necessarily people who want to, hop on board for a couple of days cruise or whatever. I know this is really big in like Florida, South Florida, and places like that where they just need help. And you get basically free room and board while you do it. But maybe you can actually start working into the community and start running charters. There's like a Uber for boats here in Chicago, I know about, where you sign up and you actually, kind of rent a boat for a weekend, and you get to pick 3 or 5, depending on how much, what plan you buy. You have the boat for the whole weekend, but you don't have to buy it. You don't have to worry about maintenance, just like Uber. You just call, you dial up Uber, you get the car. You don't worry about the car's maintenance and gasoline costs and all that. It's just there. But what I'm saying is if you love it, try to integrate yourself, ingratiate yourself there now so that when you fully retire, you have a whole bevy of ready people who want you as a hand on their boat. Maybe there's several of them for several months at a time. Maybe you want to run a small business chartering. For example, when your timeshare for that boat is up one weekend, you can maybe advertise some kind of mini cruise, and you and your spouse make sandwiches. And you know where I'm going. You can start doing that now so that when you fully leave the office, you got something planned up, you got something lined up. Okay, that's the key. Whether it's starting a business, maybe you want to teach English to recent immigrants. I don't know, and you want to start looking at the church groups, community groups, and all that are doing it now, so that when you retire, you already are known as a great English instructor. You really got 20 hours a week booked. Okay, so again, don't wait till you leave the office. Start now. Don't wait till the Monday morning after you pack up and leave your place on Friday afternoon to do all this stuff. The theme today, again, is the red zone. Start working on it now. Not only family relationships, but all kinds of relationships. Remember I told you, you're no longer going to be vice president of this department or Dr. So-and-so, head of cardiology over here, chief lawyer, whatever it is. It's gone. It's over with. You left the office. So your relationships are going to be much more important. The people you ate lunch with, went to Starbucks with, had beers after work with, during happy hour, all that is gone. From what I've been seeing and reading, unless you have super, super close friends, maybe you'll see one or two once in a while. It definitely helps if those same people live in your neighborhood or belong to the same church or whatever. But for the most part, even if you had pretty good relationships, you're just never going to see those people again. So you have to recreate your social life. So get your social networking and friendships started now. Again, that's easily done if you're already working on those hobbies we talked about. If you're going to start volunteer teaching English to immigrants, you're probably going to start picking up a whole bunch of friends at that community center or church group, right? After you retire from your main job, that will parlay easily into your new social group, right? You might be starting doing potluck dinners and all that even before you leave the office. So you know where I'm going. You have to start working on this now because loneliness is a big problem with retirees. And they said that loneliness is actually almost worse than smoking. So you definitely want to work on this, especially the guys on this call, if there are any guys on this call, to start working on that because it's a big issue. Also, your family. Maybe you never liked your sister. Maybe your brother was overbearing, whatever. Yes, that could be all true, but now that you're retired, you may want closer relations with them because it's all you have. You want to get invited to those baptisms, those weddings, whether it's your niece or nephew. Obviously, there's going to be funerals too, but you really want to sort of mend the fences because your life is short and you don't want to miss out on all that kind of stuff. Your spouse, not only I've mentioned already how you must include them in your financial planning because of survivor benefits, but also work on your relationship now and include your spouse because it's you and you and she or she and he, whatever gender you are, is going to be a big part of your life, obviously, especially at the end. So, if you're not used to each other because you had different jobs and shifts, and now you're staring at each other 24/7, it could be a big problem. By the way, the biggest growth in divorce in this country is people over age 60. They're called gray divorce. Why? Because they never have they let their relationships get cold. The kids are now out of the house, and all of a sudden now they're retired, and they're like, oh my God, I don't have nothing in common with this person anymore. I still can live 20, 30 years. I'm out of here. So don't be one of those people. Keep working on your relationship now before you retire, because you're going to be seeing your spouse a lot more often. Make sure that you have your wills and healthcare proxy and all that stuff up to date, your estate docs. We talk over an hour separately on just estate planning, but make sure you have a last will and testament. Make sure that you designate someone to be your agent if you cannot make your own health decisions. Of course, do all this before Alzheimer's or any kind of dementia sets in. I always say it's about control. If you don't do this, your state has its own ideas about who gets your stuff and who makes medical decisions for you, and you may not like it. So start working on that stuff your own. Again, think about Anthem for you to contact for an attorney reference in your neighborhood that start working on this stuff. Before I go to my top 10, just, of course, make sure it's positive. Obviously, this is a great opportunity for you to think about your later stages of life. It's not the end of the world. Think again about making your budget and all that kind of stuff. And just start working on what you want to accomplish after you leave your full-time job. Some other tips, you can read these on your own. I'm going to move on to my top 10 list, which encompasses some of this. Make sure that you can look into, again, Anthem can help you with any kind of mail order prescriptions. Usually buying 90-day supplies are much cheaper. There's all kinds of senior discounts. GoodRx is a great app for prescriptions right now. There's all kinds of senior organizations like AARP that can help out with also discounts and whatnot. There's a lot available now, for especially people who are tech savvy. So look into all that to save some money. So before Q&A, I told you about my top 10 list. These are my top 10 tips for preparing for retirement. Number one, start planning early. Remember the red zone I mentioned? 5 years minimum, 5 years before you leave. Start working on all this stuff, not just the numbers, which is important, your budget and all that, but all the emotional, mental health type of stuff too. Envision what it'll be looking like. Where are you going to be? Who are you going to be with? What are you going to be doing? All that we just talked about. Start working at it at least 5 years before you leave. Number two, save, and save some more. Stick to your goals. Be careful. Make sure your budget is correct. And if do the calculations, look at the software, and make sure that whatever your date is, your retirement date is, do you have enough money to pay for it? Can you afford it? Remember the story about people quitting too soon and then they become a Walmart greeter 3 years down the road because they're broke? Don't be one of those people. Make sure that you have your goals and you save some more to reach them. Rather work another year or two at a good job than to quit and have to be some kind of part-timer at Starbucks because you're broke. Number three, declutter and downsize early. I didn't mention this earlier, but we've been hearing from more and more retirees about how they wish they decluttered and got rid of stuff sooner, even as soon as age 50. So if you have a big house, if you have a basement full of stuff that you don't even know, I know so many people whose garages are so full of stuff, junk, that they can't even park their car in the garage. The car stays outside in the driveway, and the garage is packed with things. A lot of kids stuff. The kids are long gone, and you may still have their projects from grade school. Some people are just pack rats, so try to clean up now, because I'm telling you, when you get older, you ain't going to want to do that. It's hard work. I just had a client at age 58 do this. They decided to move to Arizona and downsize. The kids are out of the house, and they couldn't believe how hard it was to finally get out of the house that they lived in for the last 40 years. And think about doing that at 70. Not fun. Number four, take care of your health. Invest in yourself. Remember, bad health is very, very expensive and not fun. Number five, review your pension benefits. Maybe if you have a pension, which most of us don't, make sure you know where it is and what time it starts. Sometimes, and I know some people who have a pension starting at age 55, that doesn't go up anymore after if you don't take it at 55. So even if you're working, why not get the money? And most of the time, there's no way is it retroactive. So if you didn't apply at 55 to get it, you can't go say, oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. I'm now 58. Can I get my, bet 3 years worth that I missed? So if you have any kind of pensions, keep track of them. They might start early. Number 6, review your Social Security benefit strategies. Don't take it too early if you can afford to. Remember to keep up your spouse. If whoever's going to be the highest earning person in the couple may want to think about waiting until 70 if possible, because your spouse, assuming that person's going to pass away first, your spouse will get a bigger survivor benefit, as well as a spousal benefit, of course, too, if they don't have their own work history, the longer you hold out. So review your Social Security benefits. Remember SSA.gov. Number 7, invest wisely. Know your risk tolerance. Diversify. Don't keep your eggs all in the same basket. Spread it out. You still need a good, healthy smattering of stocks to keep up with inflation, even if you're 70 years old. So, mix it up. Stocks and bonds, U.S. stocks, foreign stocks, big companies, small companies, medium-sized companies, short bonds, long bonds, foreign bonds, U.S. bonds, commodities, real estate, all that. Just mix it all up. Number 8, travel early, or especially if you have any other kind of physical challenging things you want to do. For example, you might be a hiker. A lot of people I know, ironically, so many people I know are waiting till retirement, quote unquote, to finally go to Italy or have fun. And guess what happens? They or their spouse gets sick. They get a cancer reading, or they get a stroke or a heart attack, and it's over. It's so much better to start traveling, if that's what you want, early. Start taking your trips now. Take that week vacation or 2-week vacation, because you may not be healthy enough later on in life, or you just don't want to put up with it. Let's face it, travel is not easy with TSA and terrorism, and you think a 13-hour flight is hard now. Well, try taking a 13-hour flight at 70. So try to, especially any kind of physical things, try to get that in as soon as possible if you have some kind of bucket list. My joke always is you can go to Paris in a wheelchair, but if you want to go hiking in Patagonia, that's not going to happen in a wheelchair. Number 9, get rid of bad habits now. For example, if you're a smoker, if you drink too much, if you're a gambler, these are all really bad habits, and they only get worse in retirement. Why? Because you have nothing else to do. You're sitting around. I know several people who retired too early, they were way too young, and they literally turned into alcoholics because they were bored. They didn't do any of the planning we talked about today. So if you are a smoker or have some other kind of bad habit, try to definitely nip it in the bud before you retire, because it only gets worse when you sort of got more idle time, if you will. Last but not least, number 10, improve your relationships, especially with any kind of key friends and family members. Your whole social construct at the office or wherever you're working is gone once you leave. I don't care how good your friends are. The people you had lunch with, go to Starbucks with, go to happy hour with are all gone. Maybe you'll see 1 or 2 of them, maybe once, but most of the time what I've seen is, yes, it's great, it's fun, but they were really work friends. You probably heard the line bar friends too. It was more situational, not really relational. So once you're gone, you're out of that situation, so to speak. Those people are gone. It's not that they don't like you. It's just that it was a different kind of relationship. So make sure you have your new set of friends, your new relationships all set up before you leave the office, and especially with family people. Maybe you always hated your sister. Maybe you never got along with your brother, whatever. Try to make amends, because, again, when you're older, you're going to get much more, you realize life is short, and you don't want to have those grudges and live that kind of stressed out, blaming, victimization kind of life. You want to make sure that you have good relationships going in, so you get invited to those parties, those baptisms, weddings, all that, because you are now retired and you got nothing else to do. Okay, so that is my top 10 tips for preparing for retirement. Here on the slide, don't forget Anthem, as I mentioned many times. They're there for you. Maybe you need a CFP to crunch the numbers on your retirement. Maybe you need help putting together your 401k in a different way, to diversify it. Remember, don't keep all your eggs in the same basket. Maybe you need an attorney to start working on your estate docs. Whatever it is, call Anthem 800-346-5484, or if you prefer, AnthemEAP.com, and your login is Plow and Hearth. All right, so that's the end of the formal presentation. You see that chat box. Any questions? I'll leave the slide up if you need to jot down the number, phone number, and all that. While I'm waiting for questions, again, don't forget, work on your budget. Even if you're not retiring, you need a budget now to know where your money's going. And then once you know where your money's going, it's like chess. You move the chess pieces around the board to achieve your goal, right? So if you want to, let's say, add another $500 a month to your 401k, where is that money going to come from? Well, is that going to come from thin air, right? Like your parents probably told you money doesn't grow on trees. You have to know where the money is in the budget to get the money for your 401k. Maybe you spend a lot on eating out, or maybe you drinking out, whatever. By the way, eating and drinking out is the number one budget buster for Americans. But if you have a budget and say, you know what, I think one of the best things people can do is just bring their lunch to work. That could save so much money, and the attitude is wonderful. That money can go into your 401k, but at least you know where it's coming from and where it's going. That's the key. That is definitely the key. Any questions? Any more questions? You guys are quiet today. Also, besides your budget, don't forget your estate tax. This is also true for anybody at any age. Everyone needs a budget. Everybody needs a estate tax. You can get hit by a bus or get laid up by a health issue when you're 25 or 85. So you don't have to be Bill Gates or Warren Buffett to do this. Everyone needs a last will and testament, especially if you have kids. If you have minor children, you name guardians in your last will and testament. Again, if you don't, the state has its own ideas, and you may not like it. So it's about control. You say what you want to have done with your money. Who's going to make health decisions when you can't because you're in a coma or somehow have a bad reaction to some kind of treatment or whatever? You need someone there for you making decisions for you. Okay, this is last call for questions. Any other questions? Going once, twice. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Again, my name is Henry Gorecki, and I was your speaker today for Balanced Retirement Life. Good luck with all your planning. Don't forget your budget, and don't forget your estate tax and everything else we talked about. If you need help, Anthem 800-346-5484 or anthemeap.com. Your login is Plow and Hearth. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.